Introducing West Indians in Britain. First of all, here is Larry Constantine, the world-famous cricketer. Larry used to be just a summer visitor, but when the war began, he became a welfare officer to the Ministry of Labor.
Hello, everybody. This is Larry Constantine. I'd like to say a few words
Introducing West Indians in Britain.
Indians who have come
First of all, here is Larry Constantine, the world-famous cricketer. Larry used to be just a summer visitor, but when the war began, he became a welfare officer to the Ministry of Labor.
Hello, everybody. This is Larry Constantine. I'd like to say a few
Introducing West Indians in Britain.
Indians who have come
First of all, here is Larry Constantine, the world-famous cricketer. Larry used to be just a summer visitor, but when the war began, he became a welfare officer to the Ministry of Labor.
Hello, everybody. This is Larry Constantine. I'd like to say a few
Introducing West Indians in Britain.
Indians who have come
First of all, here is Larry Constantine, the world-famous cricketer. Larry used to be just a summer visitor, but when the war began, he became a welfare officer to the Ministry of Labor.
Hello, everybody. This is Larry Constantine. I'd like to say a few
Introducing West Indians in Britain.
Indians who have come
First of all, here is Larry Constantine, the world-famous.
the factory. Here in a training center in the north of England are 82 of them. People from all walks of life, including doctors, lawyers, reporters from the West Indies. They're being taught side by side with Englishmen and women to operate all the latest types of machinery. In 16 weeks, they must know how to read blueprints, micrometers, slide rules, to set up and operate lathes, capstans, drills, and grinders. When their training is complete, they will go to aircraft or ordnance factories or machine shops. There are also others from several West Indian islands who volunteered and were chosen for their skill, and on arrival were immediately introduced into production in the united effort to beat Hitler and his gang.
War is in the air, all West Indians will do their share. That is why they came, and not seeking glory or fame. They will fight for victory, let us pray here. They will fight, fight and never fear, victory is near. March, march, march to victory, march, march, march to victory. We fight land, sea and in the air, on to victory.
These men are gaining knowledge not only in the wide field of engineering, but in the workings of the British trade union system. Also, they are getting together with English workers in the factories. And this will mean a lot during Reconstruction after the war, when plans for a new era of life in the West Indies must be put into effect.
March, march, march to victory, fight for land and sea and in the air, on to victory.
Thank you, Larry. And now I'm going to ask Flying Officer Ulrich Cross to speak for West Indians in the services. Ulrich is a navigator in one of our own bomber squadrons.
Well, it's a job to know where to start. There are so many of us doing so many different things. In the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, in Air Sea Rescue and the Marines. In the RENs, the ATS, the WAF, and the nursing services. If I could navigate you on a magic carpet, we'd find West Indians at their stations all over the country, and in lots of other places which I'm not allowed to mention. tell you a bit more about how one or two of us spend our time. The Spitfire Fund started in the West Indies, and attached to one of our own fighter squadrons is Sergeant Pilot Jimmy Hyde, who himself comes from Trinidad. He is reporting back from an operational flight. Hardly any of us had experience of flying before the war. The air routes between the islands were mainly run by the Americans. When peace comes, the increase in air transport should mean a new career for many of us who have now learned the job. Strictly speaking, Bermuda, British Honduras, and British Guyana are not in the West Indies group, but they are the only other British territories in that part of the world, and from them, too, many hundreds of people have volunteered to come over here. Lance Corporal Williams belongs to British Guyana, and she is in the Royal Army Veterans Corps. She retreads tires in an army workshop. Here is a radio truck belonging to the Royal Canadian Corps of Signals. The two in the truck are the communication link between an outlying unit and its headquarters. Among these West Indians in the signals are some of the first Allied soldiers to set foot on the continent since the fall of France. They were in the Dieppe raid. These are some of the jobs we are doing. Together with others from the British Commonwealth of Nations, with men and women from the rest of the United Nations, West Indians are fighting for the new world that we all want to see. In Hyde's squadron, there are pilots from New Zealand, Poland, Britain, and Canada. Friendships are being made between people who, before the war, knew little or nothing about each other, and we find it impossible to believe that these friendships will just fade out when the war is won. The Allied nations will get together to ensure the future peace of the world. But you know, and I know, that it's when we meet in a canteen or on a job, then, for the first time, we try to understand each other, and real friendship begins.
For the islands, all of the islands in the Caribbean Sea. Yes, tales of the islands, song of the islands, and what they mean to you. In time of peace and in time of war, they're patriotic, right to the core. They have fought, will fight to the final victory. Que Polario.
Thank you, Ulrich, and happy landings. Many of you will know of the good work the British Honduras lumberjacks have been doing in this country. This evening, we have one of them with us. He is Carlton Fairweather.
Well, I haven't got much to say, except that I represent 900 of us who have come over here to help your own forestry and timber workers. You used to get nearly all your timber from overseas, from places like British Honduras, but now you've had to fell it and convert it at home, and there's where we come in.
Peter had a craze to rule the world. He started a war to conquer all. He put his friend Goebbels on the news to tell his tale on Allied views. To the painter he said, don't be sad, I'll tell the world that we have conquered Stalingrad and not that we were beaten, for that would be a shame. Cedar groves on the tropical sun, we were cutting balata or tapping for gum. We sang as we worked and happy were we. moving along from tree to tree, an axe and a saw and a shout, and down she go. That was all. We need to clear the road now. We're adding a rope in reserve for our art show when this war is o'er. Goodbye, little girl, goodbye. Just wipe up those tears, don't cry. Whatever I do, I will think of you. Your cheerful smile make life seem worthwhile. Goodbye to the isles and you. Our love will remain ever true. Till that happy day when I'm home to stay, I'll dream, little girl, of you.
Welcome, welcome to the University of West Indies Press's launch of Dr. Lisa Tomlinson's biography of Una Marson. Welcome everyone in the room, and of course that piece that you just enjoyed was of course Una Marson at the BBC, a platform that she used very significantly to promote Caribbean literature and Caribbean culture. And so I want to welcome everyone here. I am the moderator for this evening's proceedings, and we are, of course, using a different framework. We are in a cyberspace room, and so it's a very different era, not just COVID-19 that has been a part of our lives since March, but also we are still cresting beyond the challenges of race that have again reared their ugly heads to the north of where many of us sit. And so this work, Una Marson's work, a feminist, a playwright, a poet, an author, a Black activist, a consummate Caribbean woman, the launch of this work is very timely, and I'm sure you'll agree with me. This is a very timely work that is being launched here this afternoon across the various platforms. And of course, I want to observe several protocols and welcome colleagues from the University of the West Indies, Mona. I see many colleagues in the room with us this afternoon. I see colleagues also from our different campuses, Cave Hill, our Cave Hill campus, our St. Augustine campus. I see colleagues who are outside of Jamaica who are with us here in the room this evening. I also want to welcome our colleagues from the Institute of Caribbean Studies, because Dr. Lisa Tomlinson and myself, your moderator, we both sit in the Institute of Caribbean Studies, where we ply our trade and do our work. I want to welcome the representatives, members, and of course, a team from the University of the West Indies Press who are here, who have arranged and organized this entire launch, and who are steering the proceedings as we sit here in our various locations. So all protocols observed. I'm unable to see fully everyone who is in the room, and more people are joining us as we speak. You have copies of the program, I trust. We have a very snappy program lined up for you here this afternoon, and so we will have some interesting entertainment from colleagues, from friends of the author, and of course from representatives. And so I'm going to go through the program as we move along in the afternoon's proceedings and give us all a chance to participate in the activities. I see Dr. Tomlinson bringing herself on screen. Welcome, Dr. Tomlinson. You are the person that we are celebrating your work here this afternoon. And so I'm grateful to be a part of the proceedings, not just as a colleague in the Institute of Caribbean Studies at the Mona campus, but also as a friend with whom I do work in different categories and in different ways. Welcome again, Dr. Tomlinson. Friends, family members of the University of the West Indies and others. And so as we reflect on the times in which we find ourselves, Jamaicans themselves here at home in Jamaica, across the globe, we had multiple, planks where people were taking part in various demonstrations. We can position the works of an activist, of a feminist, of a Black activist, of a Caribbean woman who was able to break down many barriers, even before we had platforms like these, where we can sit in different rooms across many different geographical locations and share with each other in a simultaneous location in cyberspace. Even before we had that, she was using the media. She was using poetry, writing. She was using her plays and her own activism to challenge and to, in a sense, break down many of the barriers that existed for Black men and Black women across the world, and to challenge the kind of white supremacist ideologies that continue to push racism against the bodies of Black men and women as they try to live and breathe. And so I'm going to move across the program for this afternoon and welcome the first person who will speak with us on the program. The first person who will speak with us on the program, aside from myself, we will now have opening remarks from Dr. Sonia Stanley-Nair, who is, of course, senior lecturer and the director in the Institute of Caribbean Studies. Remember, the Institute of Caribbean Studies will be well represented here this afternoon. Dr. Tomlinson has given us the privilege of being a part of the Institute of Caribbean Studies. And so Dr. Sonia Stanley-Nair, who is our director, is a senior lecturer, a published author, and who actually has a work that is forthcoming from the UWI Press. Dr. Stanley-Nair, we are looking forward to that work. That work, of course, a dancehall reader, very timely work that will be forthcoming very shortly from the UWI Press. Dr. Stanley-Nair, who wears many hats and sits in many different locations, and I'm just going to give you a very brief synopsis of some of the many things that Dr. Stanley-Nair has in her own capacity as an author, as a researcher, as an academic, and as director of the ICS has managed to in a sense, achieve. So she's a speaker, she's a teacher, she's a researcher on Black Atlantic performance geographies, popular culture, music, and the sacred, and Caribbean cultural studies more broadly. And she has several international appointments under her belt. She's a member of the International Scientific Committee of the Slave Route Project out of UNESCO. She's also a senior research associate honorary at Rhodes University. And she's the author of Dancehall from Slave to the Ghetto. And as I said, she's the editor of the forthcoming reader on Dancehall, a reader on Jamaican music and culture. She has authored and co-authored multiple publications, which I will not be going into. And of course, she now serves on multiple boards and editorial collectives of several academic institutions, associations, and journals. Dr. Stanley-Nair is a well-grounded academic and a senior member of faculty at the University of the West Indies, Mona. So I'm welcoming Dr. Sonia Stanley-Nair. Sonia, to bring us greetings on behalf of the Institute of Caribbean Studies. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Donna. Good evening, colleagues. I know for some of you, it's perhaps even an hour or two ahead. First of all, I would like to acknowledge and recognize the colleagues, distinguished professors. I see Tunde Bewaji, I see Evelyn O'Callaghan, I see Funso Ayajina, I see Rupert Lewis, Vereen Shepherd, and Mervyn Morris. Thank you very much for joining us all. Well, you know, we are honoring Black lives, especially those that have served selflessly in what we are about today. I speak not only as director of the Institute of Caribbean Studies, but as you heard, I am a UWI Press author. The UWI Press needs to be congratulated on being a visionary institution. This biography series is a reflection of that kind of visionary work, edited by Professor Ayajina, who is with us. The series, the biography series, continues to grow from strength to strength. We need more series such as these. And I'm happy to share that I have just initiated a sound culture series, which the first publication in that series is in fact the dancehall reader, a reader on Jamaican music and culture, which is about to, in fact, it may just be in the process of being released as we speak. So let me turn to Dr. Lisa Tomlinson. She is one blazing her own trail. This book is a labor of consistent work, a labor of love, and in fact, consistent with the kind of service to activism, service to a feminist outlook and work. And of course, this book on Una Marson, a scholar, a teacher, an activist who has gone in some cases very much unrecognized, is very much timely work. Una Marson's labor was one of activism of a feminist nature related to politics, nationalism, media. Her own dramatic productions were quite poignant. And of course, we want to be able to recognize the socioeconomic welfare work that she did. Her literary output, of course, tackling such things as gender discrimination. And of course, in the context of Black Lives Matter, we want to recognize that Una Marson, we want to celebrate Una Marson as one of the Black lives indeed that has mattered and continues to matter. We celebrate her today in all the ways that she fought for various forms of freedom, various forms of Black freedom, and of course, participating against the discrimination of women in particular. So as Una Marson was a much traveled woman, may this book travel to many corners of the world and spread her impact. I want to salute the UWI Press, therefore, salute Dr. Tomlinson for this work, and of course, hope for even more from the series as time passes. I want to just say that the Institute of Caribbean Studies is very proud, one, to be celebrating in this year 33 years of existence. We do this quite proudly, and we share some of that joy and the kind of work that we've been doing, certainly in the context of this book launch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Stanley Naya. Thank you so much. And of course, continue with the good works in the Institute of Caribbean Studies. You know, you have our full support, and of course, on the rest of the faculty and from the university, broadly speaking. Thank you for such a great welcome and upon the Institute of Caribbean Studies. And so, of course, we are going to have, as I said, a robust kind of book launch in line with Dr. Tomlinson's own work and in line with the work of Una Marson, who we are really sort of looking at in profile today through this book launch. And so what we're going to have is involvement from individuals who would represent some of Una Marson's broader framework. And so we are going to now move on as a part of the launch of Dr. Tomlinson's book to have a bit of entertainment. Before we do that, I'd like to acknowledge some other colleagues. I know colleagues are here from the Jamaica Library Service, I think I see. And we have colleagues who are here we have Poland, Bartos from Poland. We have people here from Poland. People are here from the United Kingdom. Dr. Tomlinson's family members are here also logged in the room with us from Canada. And of course, a lot of our colleagues from the university, as Dr. Stanley Naya has reminded us, are here. Welcome everyone, and the group keeps growing as we move through the time. And so of course, let's now move on to the next item on our very short agenda today. We're going to be having, yes, Aaron Kamagisha from Barbados is also with us. And I haven't seen Aaron for many months, but of course, we'll talk soon beyond that, yes. And so let's now move on. We're going to have a poetry reading from Kendra Heaven. It's Kendra Heaven from the Mona Preparatory School. And let me tell you a little bit about Kendra. Who is Kendra Heaven, who is going to be doing a poetry reading for us? Kendra Heaven is an 8-year-old student of Mona Prep School. Her life at home and school is exciting and dynamic. She was awarded with several academic honor roll accolades, followed by a goal that was set and met when she received the ultimate scholastic award for her grade level, the Principal's Honor Roll. When Kendra is not covered in bookwork, the arts take over. Her participation in the junior speech choir helped secure 3 JCDC gold medals and silver for her individual piece. Like her great-grandmother, Adina Edwards, she likes to bang on the keys of the piano. School continues to keep Kendra on her tippy toes while dancing and competitive swimming. No time is wasted at home either. Before the sun kisses the horizon, the family, her dolls, and the paintbrush get their share of her effervescent personality. Kendra's aspirations are ever changing, from becoming a doctor to a painter to a singer, a pastry chef and a fashion designer. One can do it all in this century. Indeed, this is so true. For now, being daddy's assistant is what Kendra likes to do best. And of course, I'm sure we are looking forward to hearing from Kendra, Dr. Tomlinson's very good friend, and an awesome young woman who I've had a chance to meet. So let's now make way for Kendra, who will do a poetry reading as a part of this book. Kendra?
Black boy, how you play that banjo? Gee, it goes right to my toes. I could dance all night and through the day again. How your face beams. Do you love it? I'll say you do. Where did you get that rhythm, that swing and that motion, that bubbling laughter with which you punctuate your songs? I have it too. I can feel it going through me, but I can't express like you do. You know, it's good to be alive, don't you? As long as the sun shines and that banjo is in your hands. Maybe you're hungry. Maybe your shirt is going. Maybe you're not worth a gill. But what do you care? There's your banjo. The boys come and sing and hum and dance round you. They share in your joy. They respond to your songs. Those banjo songs that call me. Banjo Boy by Marson.
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you. And I'm clapping. Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. You're awesome. Thank you, Kendra. That was really great. Thank you so much. We're all proud. Thank you, my darling. Yes, indeed.
You're welcome.
Thank you, my darling. Thank you so much. And I'm sure everyone agrees that that was an awesome performance by Kendra of Marson's Banjo Boy. Yes?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Dr. Bradshaw. Yes, Dr. Myrna Haig Bradshaw. You're going to also grace us with your lovely voice very soon. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone agrees. Yes, Kendra, everyone agrees, even hearing them, but I'm sure a couple of them could also tell you how really wonderful that performance was. Yes, does anyone else agree? That was lovely and we enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you. Thank you, Kendra. Yes, Dr. Tomlinson, I see your smile. You're beaming. Thank you so much, Kendra. Awesome performance. And so, of course, Kendra performing as a child, as a girl child with great aspirations in a century that allows us to be, you know, able to aspire to many things. And I want to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Luz Longsworth, who is now here with us. She's the chair of UWI Press. Welcome, Dr. Luz Longsworth. She's also the principal of the Open Campus, BBC. Welcome, Dr. Longsworth. Good to have you with us for this book launch. Thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. Would you like to say a few words to the audience? I'm just asking if Dr. Longsworth would like to say something before we move on to the next item. On this program, very short program today, in our launch today, Dr. Tomlinson, you're looking particularly lovely, I must say. And so welcoming all who are joining us. I see the room filling up nicely. We are now over 100 participants and we have quite a few people waiting to come in. Dr. Tomlinson, your book launch is boom. I'm trying to not go into popular culture too much, but I must say the book launch is a boom today. We have many people waiting to come in and the room has over 100 participants. So the book launch a boom. Great. And so what we're going to do as we admit the people who are coming in, we see quite a few people coming in, and we are getting ready now, beyond the poetry reading, to hear something about the author and something about the work and getting to the journey of this work. And so we are going to hear this kind of discussion it's an interview. So we are doing it a little differently today. We are mixing it up so that, again, the timelines are a little different. We want to make it exciting. And so Professor Opal Palmer-Adisa is going to be interviewing Dr. Lisa Tomlinson. Let's talk a little bit about who Professor Opal Palmer-Adisa is, because again, everyone on the program today holds some very specific kind of positioning regarding, Una Marson's own work. And so we understand Professor Opal Palmer-Adisa's own location. She's a gender justice specialist professor and is the university director of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, IGDS, at the University of the West Indies. So this is the university-wide institute, IGDS. She is a board member of the Jamaican National Commission for UNESCO, where she serves as the co-chair of the Education Committee. Professor Adisa has served as the expert on Caribbean masculinity, giving presentations internationally, most recently at the OECD headquarters in France and at the Men, Masculinities and Gender Equality Interregional Dialogues Conference in Mozambique. She believes that literature and the performance arts are the best approaches to interrogate gender equality and formulate an approach to gender justice. And this, of course, fits in very timely and well with the work of Una Marson, who we are looking at launching her the biography here today. And so Professor Palmer has been doing just that through her own writing for over 3 decades. Professor Palmer-Adisa has published 20 books, and her essays, poetry, and stories have been collected in over 400 journals, a really significant body of work. These works explore social issues that have been performed throughout the United States, the Caribbean, Egypt, Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, Argentina, Brazil, among other places. And she has just concluded a UNESCO-funded research grant on positive fathering and community cohesion in Jamaica, for which she produced a workbook for adolescent boys. She's also the recipient of a 2-year European Union-funded research project titled Ending Child Abuse in Jamaica, Children Have Rights Too. Professor Adisa lectures and facilitates workshops on gender awareness and sensitivity, which includes exploration of GBV, gender-based violence, gender mainstreaming and gender equality, writers as cultural activists, and writing to bring about gender justice, ending child abuse and advocating for children's rights, masculinity, fatherhood, and urban youth, with a specialized focus on Caribbean men, gender equality and balance through creative expression, including creative writing, dramatic performance, and visual arts, as well as Writing My Story, a creative nonfiction writing workshop for rape and domestic abuse survivors. And I'm taking a breath before I continue because, of course, that is a huge mouthful, but well, deserved Professor Palmer-Adisa for the body of work that you have put on. And so I'm going to welcome Professor Opal Palmer-Adisa to the floor of this launch in cyberspace, and also welcome the person that we are honoring here today, whose work we are launching here today, Dr. Lisa Tomlinson, for the interview wherein we will hear more about how this work came to be, the body of work, and some more, of course, about Dr. Lisa Thomas. I leave the floor open. May I see Professor Adisa on the screen? I'm not seeing her.
Thank you so much, Professor Hope. And it's such a pleasure to be here this evening. The sweet rain, and it's kind of held up a little bit, but we're having rain, which we definitely need, and I'm very happy for that. But it was pelting down, so I'm hoping that people are hearing me. First of all, I want to just thank Lisa and the press for this book. I have loved and have taught Una Marson for many years. And so, but there was a lot of things I discovered in reading it that I didn't know. And so it's really wonderful to have it here and to have a new generation be aware of this formidable writer, activist, and pan-Africanist. And so actually, Lisa, that's where I am going to begin. I was going to begin with another question, but there is a place, you know, in the text in chapter 2 where you talk about her involvement, particularly her work in the League of Nations. And I think this is something I was not aware of, and her meeting and working with Haile Selassie. And even after she resigned from that position, her continued preoccupation with Ethiopia, and working to ensure that Italy and its aggression and and taking a stance on anti-imperialist and a pan-Africanist. So I want you to just, for those others who might not have known about that aspect of Una Marson's work, to talk about her stance, as a pan-Africanist, and her work with Haile Selassie, and how it informed her going forward.
Yes, thanks for the introduction, and thanks for everyone. I see quite a few of my friends here. I'm excited. So let me just get into your question. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
All right, so okay, so let me just get into the question. Well, Una Marson's involvement in Pan-Africanism came out of, it wasn't when she was living in Jamaica. When she had migrated to England, the racism that she confronted was overwhelming. And she became friend with the chief of Ghana. And it was there where she developed a keen interest in African affairs. At least one of her friends had noted that, after a while, the Caribbean was like a shadow for Una. So she became very involved in African affairs. She started to dress in African clothing, and this is where she started to change her hairstyle. So all of this started to inform the way she saw herself as a Black person. Because when she was in Jamaica, she spoke much more about colorism. So now that she was in London, that the race became a central issue for her, and also which led to working with the League. And in fact, she was very determined to work with the League. It was almost like a fluke. She went and she begged and asked and said, is there anything that I can do about this situation in terms of the Abyssinian, what was happening with Ethiopia being used as this site for imperialism. It's Mussolini trying to use this as their next imperial conquest. And she saw that, and because of not just her love for Africa, but her awareness, her consciousness of herself, and as being of African descent, she became very African, Pan-African center. And this is something that I noticed even in our discussion around Pan-Africanism in the Caribbean, where Una Marson gets omitted. And then that she became very close with Haile Selassie. In fact, she was his secretary, where she was working as a secretary. And she was also not just as a secretary, she was doing teaching sessions throughout London, where she would use this as an opportunity to educate persons or people of the community, particularly the Caribbean community, about what was happening in Ethiopia. So, and it informed her work tremendously as well, because we saw in her book of poems, Mouth and Stars, where she started to confront some of those issues of race and also of beauty standards, Black beauty standards, particularly for Black women. And then she started to so Pan-Africanism informed her work tremendously. And then we saw that also in her play, Pocomania, but we'll talk more about that later. But you'd ask, how it informed her work. So after that, unfortunately, it was very disheartening for her, because going to London, thinking, as a daughter of the soil, it was contrary. And when England did not support Ethiopia, it really took a toll on her. But nonetheless, it did not divorce her from the struggle. She continued to work within a Pan-Africanist frame, and even the way she felt that Jamaica, looking back, she also thought that Jamaica needed to reform its educational system in a way it taught Black Jamaican children about themselves. So these were all part of her activities, Pan-Africanist activities. I'm not hearing you. Sorry.
It might help if I unmute. I had muted myself because of the rain, and I didn't want that to interfere. No, I said in the biography, you document sufficiently the pivotal role she played in promoting literature and her feminist stance. What is the most crucial thing you think that young Jamaicans need to know about her? In other words, how do you situate a Una Marson now in terms of the literature and the various movements that are happening in Jamaica?
Well, I find Una Marson is so multifaceted in the way in which we situate her, even in terms of the medium that she used: radio, she used poetry, television, theater. So she used so many different mediums So when I'm asked, you're not the first person to ask this question. I did a guest lecture, and that was one of the questions students actually right at UE asked, how would you situate her? I think I would situate her just as we situate a lot of our men, male writers. For example, Claude McKay, he's situated as a writer, and he's also situated as a pan-Africanist. He's situated as a Black internationalist, and he's also situated as a globalist. So I think I would situate her just the way in which we situate a lot of our male figures within the literary and cultural area in Jamaica. So I would want students to take away from the ways in which Una Marson was very pioneering in many things that she did. So she was pioneering in the way in which she intersected, for example, she intersected gender and race. And it wasn't until the 1960s we had a term that we called intersectionality and intersectional politics. So just the way in which she examined race and gender, she examined race and class together. And in this time period where sometimes we're very uncomfortable about talking about race and class in Jamaica, I think Una Marson, her work speaks to all of what is happening today. And I think it's important that a figure like Una Marson gets situated in these paradigms, and as well as gender, right? Because she can also be used within those areas. So again, that is a multifaceted way I wouldn't want to put her, and I've written this before in an article, where I wouldn't want to put Una Marson in a singular cause or in a box. I want people to see her work and her as a person in a very multifaceted way, the way we treat male figures in the Caribbean, or within when we talk about African diasporic discourse, literary or intellectual discourse.
And it's perhaps because she is a female why her work and her position hasn't been situated the way it should. I want to talk though about mental illness, because that is something that we're hearing more of in contemporary society, and people are having a better understanding of the range of mental illness. And certainly Una Marson was a workaholic, you could say, but she also suffered mental illness. She had several periods, I think, in Bellevue. Was there mental illness in her family? Is there, we have a history of Black women certainly working themselves to death. And I think this is partly what you're positing. I don't know, but how did her mental illness, how did she cope with her mental illness outside of those times when she was, in Bellevue or in some other ways disposed? And importantly, how do you think that impacted her production?
Well, there's not much written about her mental illness in terms of the connection to her family. However, one of the ways in which, just from my observation, the way she dealt with her mental illness was isolation. So she often went away for a 2-year, 3-year period. In her biography, which is at length, by Delia Jarrett and colleagues, she speaks, it mentions there are times where there's very limited information about a particular period because she would go in isolation. I assume that within that isolation, she was writing, because oftentimes when she would come back with this burst of energy, she would come back with also new work. And she would also, and when I say new work, I'm not just talking in terms of her literary work, but she would come back with new essays. She would, get back to writing. So I think that she would use those time periods not just to isolate herself, but I think she also used those time periods to genuinely engage in her writing. Because I don't feel that she was able to stop writing. I think of that, the question you asked is interesting, how did it affect her work? Mm-hmm. Because she produced so much, and this is not to overlook her mental illness, I'm not avoiding the question, but because she produced so much, I'm trying to think of what else she could have done. Like when I think of the ways in which her activism even affected changes in terms of political changes in Jamaica, and even in terms of the literary landscape for Caribbean writers, I really cannot think of how it would have, affected the production of her work, because there's so much. I had so much to even just to put that small bio together, and I've done work on her previously, and there's so much of her work out there that it would be difficult to say that her mental illness really affected her production.
But I'm wondering, though, if we can use her mental illness as a way to maybe gauge or guide is not quite the right word that I'm fishing for, you know, for other artists, women as well as men, and the way in which their passion and their drive can sometimes lead to that. And for us then to model more moderation in terms of, you know, how we go about things. For me, that was an important aspect of her life to learn about. And as a kind of follow-up to that, you know, you talk about her isolation, her self-isolation at various places. One of the things I wanted to know a little bit more about was her relationship with her sisters in particular, and also her relationship and friendship with, which she had with literary figures such as Langston Hughes, which you mentioned. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Definitely. Well, her relationship, she had 5 siblings and 3 adopted siblings who joined the family. They were coming from destitute families. There's very little written about her relationship with her family, per se, her other siblings, other than Edith and Ethel, her 2 sisters. Those were the sisters where they had prepped her for Hampton, her school. So her early years, there's that record of a relationship that she shared with her sisters, which was a very more, you know, sisterly relationship where they, because they're a very musical family. And very artistic, not just musical in terms of writing. So a lot of time was spent together in the Marson home, you know, engaging in music, reading. So those are, and then also when she went away to England and she came back, she lived with Ethel, her sister. In terms of her other siblings, again, there's very little really information on that. Her relationship with Langston Hughes, interestingly, with the Harlem Renaissance itself, is a very like a pen pal relationship. She never met those 2, which would have been James Weldon Johnson and Langston Hughes. So they were her mentor. And in fact, it was Johnson who introduced her to the Harlem Renaissance and the poets. And that is where she adapted the style, the jazz style. So she never met, unfortunately, on the 2 occasions that she had the opportunity to meet with Langston Hughes. One occasion, again, she was suffering from her mental illness, isolation, so she never got to meet him. But nonetheless, they were her, especially Johnson, they were her mentees, and they were very supportive of her work because, again, we're talking about a period where Black internationalism, they were very supportive, you know, pushing that literary tradition that we have benefited from within the 21st and 20th century. So they were very close through letter writing. When she would write her poem Mocking Stars, when the criticism that she got in Jamaica, Johnson would quail that, and you know, he would say to her, you know, you did a good job. So that was one of the ways in which she was even able to brush off the criticism that she was getting in Jamaica. So those were her friendship with the Harlem Renaissance folks. Her other friendships were with feminists like Amy Bailey, where they did work together, activism together. In fact, they did work together where they were able to highlight through their different means. She was writing for the Jamaican Standard, and I believe Bailey was writing for the Public Opinion. So they were able to use their writing, again, collaboratively to highlight the roles of women in, for example, the labor, 1938 labor riots in Jamaica. And her relationship with some of these women, however, they were not always harmoniously, but they were very productive in that sense. In England, she did find refuge within the League. Moody was the president. However, it was said too, she was a loner. She was a loner, and she was seen as odd, and she didn't really created bonds, like, you know, any major bond through those relationships, because, you know, she was seen as odd.
Okay, thank you. 2 other quick questions. One is if you could speak a little bit about her plays, in particular Pocomania, and then I'll have one final question for you.
Yes, her play Pocomania, which I had gotten a chance to read before it was published. But that play, well, as you saw in the last chapter, all of her work, when I read her work, I see her life. They're really parallel to what was happening in her life. And her plays seem to have received were received better by the critics in Jamaica. They weren't as criticized as her poems. Her plays also explored a lot of issues of race, class. Pocomania particularly was a play that went against the respectability politics in terms of religion. You know, how could you bring up Pocomania on stage in 1930s? That was just unknown. And she was able to do that through Pocomania. In fact, it was celebrated. It was, you know, she was using folklore, drumming, and all the African identified aesthetics that at that time, Jamaica was not, or the Caribbean wasn't receptive to, not just in literature, but just in the society at large. So again, her plays were more received than her poetry. And I found also her play, London Calling, which is, I also enjoy. Again, that was about a very reflective of her own personal journey to London, where she goes to London, she meets persons from different diasporic points, so from Africa, the Caribbean, and these are students who are facing racism, and also they were navigating between the London or the society, but they didn't refer to it as London. She used a fictitious name, but nonetheless, even though she used a fictitious name as a setting, she was still able to tackle, right, with the different issues that were happening within her life and also within the community at large.
Yeah. So finally, you know, what prompted you to write the biography? Yes, and its significance, which is another, you know, it ties into another question I had asked in terms of for young Jamaican and young Caribbean women now.
Oh, well, what prompted me? Well, there are twofold to this, I hope I don't get carried away, right? There are twofold to this answer. Well, one, I've always been as a student gave me the word, this intellectual possession. I've always been intellectually possessed with the work. And thanks to Joelle, I'm a Cook, a student who gave me the word. I've always been intellectually possessed with, she's one of my intellectual possessions. And I came to know Una Marson through the works of Claude McKay, because growing up, Claude McKay and Louise Bennett were the two poets that my mother spoke to us about it, and in the Spanish Needle, etc. So I came to know Una Marson through that, and that was at a very young age. And when I got older, not older, but as a teenager, still youthful, as a teenager, I got access to Claude McKay's, just a few of his work, and her name, I saw her name there, and I was like, wow. However, I wasn't able to explore her work any further because, again, living in Toronto, at the time, libraries didn't carry books on Caribbean writers or people of African descent in large numbers. There's very, very few, like Claude McKay. And it wasn't until I got to university, graduate studies, where I was able to probe her work further. And then a colleague and friend of mine made a recommended that I write this bio. And of course, I had to, when I got home, I had to pinch myself because I always wanted to write a bio on her and Claude McKay. And when I got this opportunity, this golden opportunity, big up to the, and I big up the person in my, and big up to Carolyn Cooper, all right, Professor Cooper, recommended me. And I came home literally pinching myself because I'm like, am I really going to be writing about this woman a bio, even though I was like, oh no, this is crazy. And so that was how I came, that landed on my lap. And I forever grateful for that because it was one of, I call it a golden opportunity. And I also an opportunity because the book is not overly academic. The series is designed, targeted towards people like, you know, upper, I guess grade 12, 13, and first year university students. So again, it gave me that opportunity, not that I was running away from the academic, but it gave me that opportunity to write about her in a more accessible way. So for example, the little poet that we had there, Kendra, she was one of the first person to get the book, and she read the first chapter. Finish it because she has a busy life, as you can see through her bio, but she was one of the first. And then I think it was 2 days after she read it, she saw me and she was able to tell me her favorite part of the book. So that accessibility for me is very significant, and I'm really, salute UE Press for using these bio as a way to access to young, accessible to younger readers. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I think you've also answered why it's applicable and important for contemporary young people to read her book. And your little poet speaks to that and its relevance to people in high school and above that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Upo. And I just wanted to say one thing in terms of, acknowledging Marson. And I know sometimes we don't really like to talk about these things, but I found, when you asked the question, you talked about her gender as being one of the factors in, limiting her not limiting her, but one of the factors why perhaps she's not as popular as the others. But I, just from examining her work further and other artistic figures in our history, our cultural and literary history, I think it's also, I don't think it was just her gender. I wouldn't say it was her class, because she did belong to the middle class, like Claude McKay. But I think too, we have to perhaps think about how race played into, again, intersecting all of the variables. So her gender and race also playing a factor here. And the reason why I just want to end with this is because I really want us to think about how we construct narratives in the way we look at our national, icons and figure. Because when I was doing research on her, I found that during the same time, and this is not to take anything away from the artist who I'm going to mention, but during the same time, Marson was doing her work, she was doing the same thing as Edna Manley. So what Edna Manley was doing for art, Edna Marson was doing for literature. So Edna Manley saw the need to, the visibility of Black faces, particularly, right, in painting. And Marson saw this need also for us to tell our story. But yet we celebrate one and we don't celebrate the other. And yes, I know people will say, oh yeah, but we celebrate Louise Bennett. But again, it wasn't until long after, 1965 or 67, I believe. And again, that was validated through a man. So I think we really need to construct the narratives around the way we speak about our icons and how we acknowledge these icons. Because I know when I read about a lot about Marson, it tends to be, oh, it's her gender. But I also think there's a gender, and there's a race factor that we need to, it is haunting, but we need to address it moving forward if we're to really equally celebrate, right? Equally celebrate our literary and our cultural icon, because Marson, she did a lot, not just in the region, not just nationally, but internationally. When you look at the body of her work, her literary work, her activism, and how her activism also affected change, because it was through her activism why, for example, the Moy Commission, when she went to the Moy Commission and she was saying, look here, she advocated not only for common law union, but she also advocated to tax bachelors and unmarried men. And she wanted to use that money to support, to mine children who were not being supported by their fathers. So these were the type of activism that she was involved with in documenting even women's presence in the labor, the 1938 labor uprising that I mentioned earlier. When we think of that, we don't even think about women, but it was through her medium that we were able to know this. And also her Cosmopolitan, the newspaper or magazine that she owned and run. So she did so much. So it is so difficult for me to just sit here and to leave here this afternoon and say that, okay, well, it's just because she's a woman. But I also really think that it's intertwined with race and gender. And these are things that we have to think about, especially during this time, if we're really supposed to be revitalizing and reforming our national, right? Our national, not just our national symbolic statues, but our national outlook, our minds and how we receive and how we represent history. And that's just how I want to end it.
And that is a very appropriate and accurate ending. In fact, I would say you knocked the nail on its head with issues around race and class in Jamaica that we are still, some of us are still very reluctant to deal with, and which is why there's so many parallels with what is happening in the Black arts movement. And I do think, as you've said, it's not just because of that she was a woman, because that she was also a Black woman and the things that she was dealing with. So thank you very much.
And thank you.
And of course, we want to thank Dr. Tomlinson, author, and Professor Opal Palmer Disa for that exploration into the work, but into the life of Una Marson, and also Dr. Tomlinson's own life. We got a little bit here and there, and positioning the launch and the book as well within the times that we find ourselves. I went on Amazon Kindle because I have a little Kindle on my phone, and the Amazon has a little list of recommended readings because of the times that we're in. So they put up a lot of books on race and understanding race. A lot of them, many of us would have read because of our own positioning. But this idea of intersectionality that you brought up, Dr. Tomlinson, at the end, that, Una Marson would have been denied in many ways from being positioned at the forefront of some of these activities because of her gender, because of her race, and that the way that this lack of privileging of a Black woman would have dogged her at that time. But we understand that in today, the 21st century, that many people of color, Black men, Black women, are still facing the challenges that white supremacist ideas bring. So again, the work is available. This book, Dr. Tomlinson's biography of Una Marson, is available at many different vendors. It's available at University Press. You can purchase it there. It's available at UA Bookshop, UWI Mona campus. It's available on Book Fusion, one of our Caribbean vendors, and it's available on Amazon. And of course, it's on Eurospan for the UK, Middle East, and Africa. And you can, and I'm told from the UWI Press that they've already sold over 2,500 copies. Dr. Tomlinson, the book is doing very well. So we're giving you a round of applause. I'm clapping because the book is doing very well. And I'm sure as we move through the timelines that it will continue to do it. And remember, you have to sign my copy. So remember, we have to get the signed copies for people who are connected to you in the way that many of us are. And we're moving through the program again. Thank you for that, Professor Medisa, for that grand exploration of the work, but also of the life and activities of Una Marson, some of which we may not have known, that wholesomely, or illnesses and otherwise, all of that coming together to make her the seminal figure, literary figure, feminist activist, Black woman, media, all of these things that make her someone that we are here speaking about today. Now, I'm moving along through the program, and we are bringing another young person, because we have to keep the generations connected. And so we're going to have another poetry reading, and this time we're going to ask Naeem Edwards, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Naeem Edwards is going to join us to do a poetry reading as a part of the activities that we have here this evening. And who is Naeem Edwards? Naeem Edwards is 10 years old, and he's a grade 5 student at St. Hugh's Preparatory School in Kingston. Naeem is an avid footballer who plays with the Harborview Football Club and the St. Hugh's football team. He has represented the Harborview Football Club in Hungary and has also represented his school and St. Andrews Central DAJT spelling competition. And so join me in welcoming now Naeem Edwards, who will give us another piece of active engagement with some poetry from Una Marson. Naeem, you have the floor.
Not going hungry anymore. Mango start to ripe. Not going stay inside my door. Mango start to ripe. Not going sigh for bread and fish, nor even the most dandy dish. Now there's nothing more I wish. Mango start to ripe. Mango Time Again by Una Marson.
your name, and of course I have to clap and be able to clap the young one. Thank you so much, and it's great to hear your voice and to see you and joining us for our book launch. I'm sure Dr. Tomlinson is going to make sure that you have a copy of the book at home, so when you are ready to read it, it will be there for you, and you can say you have a signed copy. I'm acknowledging Dr. Livingston while he's here. He's the head of CARMAC, one of our faculty members. Yes, name, thank you. Thank you. You did a great job. Thank you. And it's mango time. Eh? Right now it's mango time in Kingston. Some of us, like myself, have mango trees, and we are dealing with the mangoes. So it's mango time again, a very appropriate selection. I know Dr. Tomlinson and the team at UWI Press were instrumental in making these selections so that we have the kind of aura that we can share with those of us who are here in Jamaica, but even more so with many of the persons in the room who are joining us from far and across a lot of different waters to share with us here this afternoon. And so they're trying to have a tight book launch. Dr. Tomlinson told me it's going to be an hour. I said, no, it's not going to be an hour, but we are doing very well with time. And so we are going to be treated really and right now to a very, very select piece of musical entertainment. And we claim her as our own on the Mona campus, but many of you will know her as Simply Myrna, jazz singer, musician par excellence. She's also Dr. Myrna Haig Bradshaw in the Institute of Caribbean Studies, where she studied with us. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Myrna Haig, and this is what she sent in as her biography. Myrna Haig, Mrs. Sonny Bradshaw in private life, sleep well, Sonny, is director of the Jamaica Oterius International Jazz Festival following the passing of her husband, Sonny Bradshaw. Myrna should present an interesting study for a specialist in organizational management. She has the awesome task of dealing with scheduling and arranging accommodation, air and ground transportation, sponsorship and booking the acts for the festival, the International Jazz Festival, the Oterius International Jazz Festival. Myrna Haig is well known in Jamaica and the UK as a singer, actress, and journalist. A past voice tutor at the Jamaica School of Music, Ms. Haig has also earned a BA music major degree at the UWI, graduating with first-class honors, while maintaining her performing career. In 2015, Dr. Haig Bradshaw completed her doctorate in cultural studies at the University of the West Indies, focusing on jazz in the Caribbean, and I like to say, in the Institute of Caribbean Studies. She's also a recipient of the Silver Musgrave Medal 2015 from the Institute of Jamaica. She was a lead vocalist with the Jamaica Big Band and the Jamaica Jazz Mobile. An articulate speaker, Myrna Haig Bradshaw, Dr. Haig Bradshaw, has presented papers on the development of Jamaican jazz during an island-wide tour of schools by the Big Band, a project which she spearheaded by creating the first concert in Oterius, sponsored by the Jamaican radio station, AMFM, and also at a symposium on entertainment and the tourism products at the University of the West Indies. She has also presented a paper on jazz at the Institute of Jamaica and is currently a tutor at the University of the West Indies. She tours annually in the UK and Europe following the Oterius Jazz Festival and has appeared frequently at the Birmingham International Jazz Festival, the Wigan Jazz Festival, the Hull Jazz Festival, and the Brecon Jazz Festival. She has appeared as Jazz Jamaica All-Stars on the direction of Gary Crosby, OBE, at the Snape Music Festival, at the Edinburgh Jazz Festival, and the London Jazz Festival, Royal Albert Hall, and also at the Purcell Room in the Royal Festival Hall. Her most recent project, Simply Myrna, a solo concert, has had a successful 10-year run in Jamaica and the USA. And so, of course, I'm going to welcome Myrna Haig Bradshaw, Dr. Haig Bradshaw. She goes by many names, Mrs. Sonny Bradshaw in private life, who is going to give us a treat. Those of us who are able to attend Simply Myrna and other jazz specialties know that we're going to now get a treat where she's going to grace us with her voice and her presence in song. Take it away, Myrna.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Here is one of my favorite sounds. You can hear me? Can you hear me?
We are hearing you, Myrna, loud and clear. Please go ahead.
No complaints and no regrets. I still believe in chasing dreams and placing bets. And I have learned that all you give is all you get, so give it all you got. I've had my share and drunk my fill, and even though I'm satisfied, I'm hungry still to see what's down another road beyond the hill and do it all again. So here's to life and every joy it brings. So here's to life, to dreamers and their dreams. Funny how the time just flies, and love can go from warm hello to sad goodbyes, and leave you with the memories you've memorized to keep your winters warm. There's no yes in yesterday, and who knows what tomorrow brings or takes away. As long as we're still in the game, we've got to play for love, for laughs, for life. So here's to life and every joy it brings. So here's to life, to dreamers and their dreams. May all your storms be weathered, and all that's good just get better. Here's to life, here's to love, here's to you. May all your storms be weathered, and all that's good just get better. Here's to life, here's to love, here's to you.
Thank you, Myrna. Are we getting another one? Are we getting any more?
Yes, you can have another one.
Thank you.
Encore.
Encore, yes. More simply, Myrna. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Myrna, please unmute your mic. Thank you. Please unmute, yes. You're now unmuted. Good. Yes, please go ahead.
Who can I turn to? Yes?
Yes.
When nobody needs me. My heart wants to know, and so I must go where destiny leads me. With no star to guide me, and no one beside me. I'll go on my way, and after the day, the darkness will hide me. And maybe tomorrow I'll find what I'm after. I'll throw off my sorrow, beg, steal, or borrow my share of laughter. With you, I could learn to, with you on a new day. But who can to if you turn away. But who can I turn to when nobody needs me? Who can I turn to when you're far away? With no star to guide me and no one beside me, I'll go on my way, and after the day, the darkness will hide me, and maybe tomorrow I'll find what I'm after. I'll throw off my sorrow, beg, steal, or borrow my share of laughter. With you, I could learn to, with you on a new day. But who can I turn to? Who can I turn to? Who can I turn to if you turn away?
Unmuting. Thank you. Simply Myrna Haig Bradshaw, Dr. Haig Bradshaw. I have to give you all the titles. Thank you for that wonderful food for the soul.
Thank you for having me.
Refreshments. Thank you. That was great food for the soul. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing with us on behalf of the entire team, the UA Press, Dr. Tomlinson, and everyone assembled in the room, and those who are watching on YouTube. I have to acknowledge the YouTube audience. There's a YouTube audience as well. So thank you so much, Myrna Haig. Sincerely. And so one of the things that we wanted to have today was a very tight book launch, because we know that we are working in a different environment, a different framework, and people tend to complain that they are very zoomed out because they have to go through and attend a lot of these meetings. They're teaching via the platforms and using the different portals. But this book launch, Dr. Tomlinson, as you and the team did say, has been a very rich and very rewarding moment in time. And many have been introduced to notions and ideas about Una Marson that they may not have heard before. And so before I give my closing remarks, I just want to acknowledge in the room as well, Professor Afua Cooper, who is joining us from Dalhousie University in Halifax. And again, Dr. Tomlinson, there's many persons who are here to support her from Canada, because she has lived and worked in Canada as a part of her own life's journey. And so we acknowledge the persons who have joined us from Canada. So we have come to the end of our very tightly wrapped schedule, of course, being fed in music and in poetry and in word and in narrative and discussion by the various participants on the very short program that we have today. So I would like to thank all the persons who have participated. I would like to thank, of course, Dr. Stanley Nair, the Director of the Institute of Caribbean Studies, for sharing with us in her welcome and opening remarks. I'd like to thank, of course, Kendra Heaven, Miss Kendra Heaven, for that beautiful poetry reading, that was really a dramatic piece. And of course, I'd like to thank Professor Opal Palmer Disa for really fleshing out and bringing out quite a bit of information in that special interview, really, with Dr. Lisa Tomlinson. I'd like to thank Neen Edwards for reminding us about mango season and of course giving us that poetry reading and participating really with us here today. It's very good to see the young ones being a part of this activity. Thank you, Dr. Tomlinson and the team, for that. Thank you, Myrna, again, for those several pieces of musical, again, I say food for the soul that we really have closed out with today. And I'd like to thank everyone at the University of the West Indies Press, the team. I'd like to thank Kelly Williams, who worked very hard to pull this entire book launch together. I'd like to thank the entire team at UA Press, Dr. Powell, Donna Muirhead, the IT, the persons who are dealing with the IT section behind the scenes. A lot of work to keep us together with whatever incursions we have been trying to come across the timeline. We have had a very good book launch, and as well the work that was done by the team to bring this publication forward and to have a launch at a time when the world is still trying to find its feet in a very shifting series of activities. The world is kind of still trying to figure it out. We are coming out of the COVID-19 period, and we are smack dab in the middle of racial unrest in the United States of America, and the discussions across the globe that connect with those. And here we are this evening looking at the work of Dr. Lisa Tomlinson about a woman who fits very squarely in the middle of these discourses. So as we leave the room, I want to thank everyone who joined us from across the globe. People are here from Poland, people are here from the UK, people are here from the United States of America, Barbados, across the Caribbean, all the colleagues and friends from the Mona campus, professors emeritus, professors, I see Professor Caroline Cooper, who was in the room. I saw her at one point. I can acknowledge her as one of the persons who has helped to steer the careers of many of us on the Mona campus and in the Institute of Caribbean Studies. And of course, thanking everyone who visited, participated, and reminding you that the book is available from the UWI Press. It's available at the University of the West Indies Bookshop on the Mona campus. It's available on Amazon. It's available from Book Fusion, a Caribbean vendor. And of course, it's also available on Eurospan. So you can get access to the book from a variety of sources. So join on with us and be a part of that diet that Dr. Tomlinson has provided for you. And remember, there will be more books coming out of the biography series that UWI Press is putting forward. And we will invite you, of course, to the next book's launch that is coming up, I am sure, very soon. Thank you so much for joining with us. And as your host for this evening, I've enjoyed myself immensely. And so I look forward to being a part of, even as a participant, another such book launch in the near future. Thanks to everyone. Have a great evening. And of course, do continue to engage with good literature, writing, and information about who we are as Caribbean people, but also as Black people and people of African descent here in this region. Thank you so much and have a great evening. Buy the book. Thank you. And Dr. Tomlinson is holding up the book. Oh, Dr. Tomlinson, see, this is the book. Hold up my book, so I can't leave from my purse to get the book.
Naeem, I'm asking Kendra and Naeem to hold up their books, please.
Yes, Kendra and Naeem, please hold up your books. Yes, let's hold up the book so everyone can see the book. Yes, and of course, it's graced with a photograph, a beautiful photograph of Una Marson. Yes, and Professor Adisa. Yes, Professor Adisa. All of the books, yes. Kendra and Naeem have their
my sister Cheryl.
Kendra and Naeem have they left the building?
Hi, Diane.
Yes. Is your sister holding up her book?
Yes.
We have her on the screen as we close off so people can see the book. Tomlinson's family is here, her sister is here, I know Karen is here. Can we hold up the book as we exit the launch, and of course close out with copies of the book, and Dr. Tomlinson continue to write and to curate good information, well-researched information about people in the region and about activities, cultural and otherwise, that are very important to us understanding who we are. Congratulations again. Thank you so much. Is that Kendra holding up her book? Hold up your copy of the book, Kendra. Yes, thank you. And is Naeem still with us?
Yes.
Yes, ask him to hold up his copy of the book, because it's good to see the connection across the generations from Una Marson coming through, Professor Adisa, Dr. Tomlinson, and Kendra and Naeem. This is a very important link through the different generations as we celebrate a work, but celebrate a life, and celebrate the kind of activism that is critical to our understanding of self. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so we are signing off. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thanks everyone for coming out. I'm not good with names, so I won't mention any names. And I thank all the participants for taking part. And I want to especially thank Naeem and Kendra for coming on their busy schedule and for practicing a few days on Zoom. So they did their practicing, right? And thank everybody again. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Thank you all.